Willow Creek Springs presents Healthy Living with your host, Joe Grumbine.
Hello and welcome to the Healthy Living Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Grumbine, and I have a very special guest today. And it's funny because a lot of times I hear people calling each other cousin, brother, sister, and they're not necessarily related. But my guest today is actually the daughter of my aunt, truly my cousin. We have Nichole Rafferty, and it's really cool as a teeny little bit of background before she gets into her story. Nichole and I have been sort of working together for a while, several years now, and we've been talking about working together for several years now. And just in the last couple of months, things have just sort of blossomed, and I'm just really happy um, that all these things are starting to come together. And I'm looking forward to Nichole being a guest on a number of shows. She's got a wealth of experience, a fantastic story, and welcome to the show, Nichole. It's so great to have you.
Thank you, Cousin Joe.
No
I kind of call us the 12 tribes of the 12 tribes of Grumbines.
doubt.
You're from the first tribe, and I'm from the fifth tribe. And
Right.
I didn't really understand the magnitude and the beauty of the family that we came from until until I compiled and completed Grandma Angie's "Oh Mamma Mia."
Uh-huh.
And that was a journey of great formation for me, faith formation, family formation, many things that I lost out on because my mother, which is their daughter, I lost her at a very young age. And it's a very tragic story, and it's a big part of my childhood trauma in that affected me mind, body, and soul from about the age of 5. Okay. So yeah, go ahead.
I'll throw this one little thing out, but you'll get plenty of time. I just, many of our guests, people that have been very instrumental in the healing of others, whether it's themselves as healers or people that bring people together or people just that have a gift of creating or whatever, almost every single one of them has a pretty traumatic story in their childhood. And I don't know how it works or why it happens that way, but the people that have chosen to be who they are here to be and to take their own life in take charge of their own life have taken those traumas and really done wonders with it. And I think that you're showing that gift as well. Anyways, sorry to.
No, I appreciate that. So yeah, so I did have a very traumatic childhood just because of the loss of a mother, and being the oldest daughter of 5 children put a lot of burden on me to lead by example. And the reason why I start off with that, because trauma is your biggest teacher
For
about
sure.
living and about death, actually.
Hmm.
So I remember at the age of 7 just being begging God to make things right, bring my, and I was practically abandoned because I I lost when I lost my mom. I also was sent to go live with grandparents that so I didn't have my dad, I didn't have my brothers, and I only had one sibling, one sister. And then um, the baby of the family went to a separate family altogether. So, childhood abandonment, child neglect, that kind of trauma does stay with people for their whole lives. And I remember at the age of 7, which is the age of reason, asking God to make things right. And I was demanding these things. And in the Bible, it said that if you have the heart of a child and you ask, your prayers will be answered.
Right.
And they weren't. And I remember that was when my conversation with God I became angry at God. I no longer trusted God. I no longer wanted to believe in him, even though I knew there was a God. Like from the earliest ages, I just always knew that there was a creator.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't understand why bad things happened to good people. I didn't understand why there was evil in the world. And even though I knew all the Bible stories about the Garden of Eden and original sin and all of that stuff that formed my brain as a young child, and then being told the scriptures that God can do all things. I, as a child, I was I was broken. I was angry, and I was constantly challenging God from that moment on. Until so I'm just saying, from a timeline perspective, I'm 50 now. In the 50 years, the journey for me to understand while I was put on this earth kind of evolves from that childhood trauma moment of losing parents and family and all that kind of stuff, to fast forwarding to my years of traveling. I decided I was a very much a rebel. I was very much an anti-authority child, getting kicked out of classrooms. And it's not that it's not that I didn't respect authority. It's that I was always conscious of abuse of authority.
Oh.
And the abuse of authority that I saw in parents, grandparents, strangers, church leaders, school leaders was always very prominent to me. And so
We
I
have a
had,
lot of that in common. I think I was always the rebel of my family as well. And I think that's a lot of what it was. Things just weren't right. I'm like, I couldn't deal with bullies. I didn't want to, it was, just not going to put up with that stuff.
right. And I think this was is where our souls really, you realize your physical body is one thing, and that you're only going to be on this earth for this limited period of time. And but our souls are really something that I became conscious of during this whole I'm angry at God, and I don't I have a great mistrust of authority, especially when I see abuse of authority, saying one thing and doing another, authoritarian, where people want to put you under their thumb and you can't have a mind of your own. Those things, I mean, made me a black sheep at a very young age, through all my junior high, teenage, and in the 80s and the 90s, they were forming the fourth wave feminist movement. And I wasn't raised with a mother, so I was raised by a single dad with 5 children, and I was the oldest daughter, and I was given a lot of responsibility. And I would say what was forming my conscience, besides the fact that I did respect my dad and love my dad, and I did want to set good example for my younger siblings, and I was very protective of them. Uh, how do I put it? We I knew that I was put on this earth for a purpose that I could not understand. And when you are under the control of your parents, right, from the time you're born until you leave home, and I left home young, before I turned 18, and
Too.
I was a black sheep, and I just this whole time I'm having a conversation with God, like, I was angry at you, but I had a dialogue going with him the whole time. And this is, even though I was angry at God and I was rejecting my faith formation of being a Catholic, um, I was not really raised Catholic because my dad remarried to a non-Catholic, and the stepmother was another trauma in my life that made me leave home early and start my life in a completely different way. Um, but I had it was the Grumbines, my cousins, my other aunts and uncles of this big, beautiful tribe. And my grandparents always wanted to stay connected to me before they passed away. That really pulled me forward with grace and mercy, and helped me to understand who God is through that through their faith through their faith as a young adult in college, being exposed to the feminist the feminist, because I was studying women's studies, I was studying ethnic studies. I mean, you name it. I was all about DEI before it was DEI. And it was a good and a bad thing in a sense, because the feminist movement is great for shaping women who don't want to have, who are not mothers, who do not want to be mothers, and don't want to be married. And I, at that time, was such a broken young woman that I was anti everything. So it was the reason why I tell this part of my story is because my community college years and transferring to UC Berkeley, doing my internships in Washington, D.C., living in the Bay Area, set me on a real liberal path. Okay. Like and I learned, I worked at the Feminist Majority Foundation in DC.
Wow.
And that's where I learned that the feminist movement doesn't want you to have families, and they don't want you to be married, and they really hate men. I could not believe the hatred towards men that I saw by women who were bitterly divorced or lesbians and or had issues with their fathers or their brothers. It was unreal to me. And the thing is I did not have a father that abandoned me. I did not have a father that abused me. I had loving brothers. I had loving uncles. I had loving grandparents and grandfathers. So I did not have a view of men negatively. But when I ended up in this job, it was like a job that I had in between, like one of my summers, well, in between semesters at Berkeley. And it opened my eyes to the fact that I did want to have a family, because as I was going down this pathway, they were like anti-family, anti-marriage. And I was like, but I want to be married. I do want a family and I do want children. And it was so at odds with what I was experiencing with the policies and the agenda of the Feminist Majority Foundation. It was literally about undermining all of the fabric that held families together. And that upset me.
I'm just curious. I've never really been, exposed to the feminist movement the way you're describing it. I mean, I've always been around a lot of strong women. That's always been part of my community, but I never felt, that they had any animosity toward, some of them obviously, but not, but so I guess I never really have put myself in this feminist world, which maybe is good, but I'm just curious, like, where would they think that you get your sense of community? Like, we're communal creatures, human beings. We need community, whether it's family or a spouse or a partner of some kind. What were they saying is the good way to have this community here?
Well, they're not about community, they're about policies, and policies that pit men and women against each other. And economically, socially, they break down religion and faith that protects the family. And I was exposed to all of that. I mean, and it really, and I'm talking at a policy level. I'm talking about big financial dollars where they're setting up big grants and programs that go out into the community. And I'm not going to say that I didn't benefit from any of these programs that went out when I was a single girl going out into the world and had no formations. And I was formed in Ms. Magazine and Oprah, and go out and get your college degree and go out and make as much as any man, go after the high corporate positions. And that's what I did. I got my degree from Berkeley. I graduated, I went out, and I didn't realize when I joined the corporate world to pay off my student loans how they take corporate women and pit them against each other. So the women who go up the corporate ladder typically never have children. They forego having children, and they bully and I can't even describe the corporatism and the bullying of women who have children. They take their energy, they take their talent, and they really make them choose between family and their career. And I did not, once I got married, I got married later in life. I was 30 by the time I found my Mr. Right. And the window for me to have children was closing. At 30, I was like, oh, I want to get married and have a baby right away. Well, that was not I was not gifted that. I could not have babies for 5 years after I got married. And I was troubled by that. And so, at the time, my best friend at Berkeley had cancer. She was 30 years old. She was diagnosed at 30. And she went the traditional route. We went to Berkeley together. She was from San Francisco. She had access to all the best everything medical care. She decided to do traditional therapies and holistic therapies. And she was just truly one of the only people women, I guess I should say, that I could we connected and we could talk deep about many concepts. We basically went through peace and conflict studies together, which is basically global studies now.
Okay.
And so, we studied the global system of transnational corporations and transnational organizations, or these multinational corporations, organizations, the military industrial complex. I mean, all the world governments, the United Nations. I mean, it was an interdisciplinary study, and my brain was on fire. And she was the only person that I could talk to about such complex things. If you're a poli-sci major, all you talk about is government. But, we would take classes on ecology, and we would take classes on the environment and pollution. And it wasn't just about the governments. It was about also the corporations and the NGOs and what they're doing and how. I mean, I was introduced to Soros and all of his work and many different concepts that are coming to fruition today. I was being trained in the 90s.
Wow.
Okay. And the beautiful thing about my degree, I'm glad I almost did not graduate from Berkeley. I was never even supposed to go to Berkeley. I was a DC student, graduating high school. I went to the community college and I discovered I wasn't stupid. I actually realized, I was a K through 12 failure, absolutely K through 12 failure of the public school system.
Okay.
I did go to the community college, and all my professors had PhDs, and they actually took an interest in their students. And I would have these fabulous conversations with my professors at the community college. And even though I had such poor writing skills, and because when you fail K through 12,
Right.
you enter into the adult world ill prepared, couldn't write paragraphs. I couldn't even write a complete sentence. I was fragments galore. And it was at 18 learning the basics of everything. And then, but my professors took such an interest in me because I could have deep conversations with them and about their content and about what they were doing. So anyhow, they were
actually getting the material where a lot of people that can write and speak and go with the program, they can play the part, but they a lot of times don't get the material. They can say the words, but they don't really get what they mean.
Absolutely. I hold my community college professors in high esteem. Anyhow, the reason why I'm telling this story is because before I transferred to the university, which my professors all wanted me to apply to UC Berkeley, I did not really want to go there. But one of my professors that I had read his books and touched me so hard, it was Ronald Takaki. He led the ethnic studies programs at Berkeley, and he wrote several books about just the coming from different shores and how America is made up from people from many different shores, as well as the indigenous people. And his books really touched my heart, and they really helped shape my view of being an American. Because when you're going up through the commie system of the communist system of our education, I was fully getting trained in communist thinking. I was I was trained in all of that. It is cultural Marxism. I now know what it is. I now can call it what it is. The community colleges and the universities all train you in cultural Marxism. And I didn't know what cultural Marxism was until I took a political economy class at Berkeley and read Das Kapital and read the
You're
whole, the
like, hey, wait a
whole,
minute.
right? I read the whole body of work. And I I was gonna I realized I didn't want to be an ethnic studies major because I realized the world didn't revolve around just these ethnic um paradigms that were actually being used to divide and conquer
Exactly.
the culture, right? Our culture, the American fabric. And I was like, but I love America and I love men, and I don't think I am a feminist, and I don't think that I am I don't
But
think
you
that I was.
discovered yourself, your true self at a young age. A lot of people never do that.
Yeah, that was at like 18, 19. I took my first trip abroad to Mexico. I visited the pyramids in Mexico City, the pyramids of Teotihuacan. I went to several places in Mexico, but I had a very mystical experience in Mexico, which I had had a dream 2 days before I left for Mexico, and I was going to the pyramids. I was going up to the top of the pyramid of the sun. I was exhausted because it was the bigger pyramid. I go down, and then I had to go up the pyramid of the moon. And it was getting towards the end of the day. The tour bus is leaving, and in my dream, I saw clouds coming, and it was raining, and I was up at the top, and then I had like these flashes. Okay, in my dream, and then they woke me up.
Wow.
So I get to the top of the Pyramid of the Moon, and I turn around to go look down the Valle de Muerta, which is the Street of the Dead. Okay, and I can see the Pyramid of the Sun, and I'm on the top of the Pyramid of the Moon, which is the feminine. The sun is the masculine, the moon is the feminine. I'm looking, and all of a sudden I see flashes of like all the people who built what I'm looking at, like
Whoa.
ghosts, almost like not ghosts, but just like holograms. It was
Yeah,
weird.
yeah.
I like
Cool.
saw it in its heyday where people were building it and using it, and all these people's lives that were so important and instrumental at that moment in time. And then next thing I know, the clouds are moving in. There's lightning. There's incredible thunder, which was part of my dream. And I'm
Wow.
and I'm sitting there going, I need to get off of this.
Yeah, you're kind of a lightning rod.
But before I got down, I mean, after that kind of like that holographic view of what I was looking at, I sat there, and all of a sudden it was like my life flashed before me, and I realized that my life is just an insignificant grain of sand on a beach, right? You look at the sands of a beach, and I'm just one grain of it. But then I was looking at all this holographic imagery of the people that built this great city, or this pyramid of Teotihuacan, and I said every one of those lives matter. Every single one of them is the reason why I can even come here and see what they did. And
Right.
at that moment, I think I was like 19 years old. Like
Wow.
I discovered that my life had meaning,
Mm,
despite, and not just my life, but everybody's life had meaning and a purpose.
right.
I just didn't know what it was.
Yeah, yeah. That's the hard part.
So that was my first awakening, actually,
That's powerful.
at 19. And where I knew I had my life had meaning, everybody's life had meaning. I really embraced being pro-life at that moment in time, because the feminist movement tells you that, you can destroy life and it's okay. You're the creator of life, you can destroy life.
Right.
As in the feminist movement and the whole abortion issue, and our family is very pro-life. So I was always in turmoil about that until that moment in my life hit me, and God revealed to me that I had a purpose in being there. It wasn't revealed to me yet, but it was like my
You
first
just have
awakening.
one. I mean, that's so many people wander the earth just going, what's it all about? And they don't even just to understand that your life is important and there is a true purpose for you. Just to know that, even if you don't ever find out entirely what it is, just to know that you're living it, that you are expressing this purpose. That's huge. That's a meaning. That is a purpose for people.
Yes, it was a huge turning point for me. And
Huge.
then, so at that point in time, I said to myself, well, before I transfer to the university, because when I turned 21, I had a little bit of money that was given to me by the grandparents. And my brother invested his, and I said, well, I'm going to go travel with mine.
Nice.
It wasn't that much. It was a few $1,000s.
Huh?
And I had been managing the youth hostel in San Clemente, which doesn't exist anymore. But I met so many people traveling the United States and traveling California, people from all over. They were telling me all their stories and their adventures. And it just like after my experience down in Mexico, which was like an academic uh, tour type, based travel, I was meeting all these free birds that were just traveling around the United States and California, either by themselves or in groups with people, partner or whatever. And it's inspired me because I said, I want to travel to South America. I want to go see the Falls de Iguazu. I want to go hike Machu Picchu. I want to go to Easter Island. I want to go to the Galapagos. And at the community college, I got really involved in the international club. And so I had a friend that I had met at the community college that was from Brazil, and another one that I had met that was from Colombia. And so they always said, well, if you're in our country, you have to come call me and look me up. So I had all their information, and I was not quite sure like how I was going to do this, but I ended up buying a one-way ticket from from Miami to Sao Paulo, and a ticket from Bogota, Colombia back to Los Angeles. And
Wow.
I am like 22 years old now, like 21, 22. And so I bought those one-way tickets, and I had to get from basically Sao Paulo, Brazil to Bogota, Colombia. And I want to say I only had like $12,000 to do it.
Wow.
And so I took trains and planes, and I traveled in youth hostels, and I met some extraordinary people. And it was a great act of faith to travel because nobody wanted to go to South America. Everybody
Right.
wanted to go to Europe. I didn't have enough money to go to Europe, and I'd always wanted to go visit these amazing places. And I met when I was in when I was in Brazil, I came across this book called The Celestine Prophecy. I don't know if you've ever read it, but it talks about
Yeah, I
energy.
don't think I've read it.
It's an amazing book, and it's kind of prophetic. When I got there and I found this book in the terminal, and I was like, I need a good book to read, and it was all about South America. It was all about finding energy and like in Peru, and I mean, I was shocked at what I like. It's like all God's like doors opening, and that's the way I know like God had not abandoned me because of my abandonment issues with my first family. And even though I was angry at God, I knew that God had never abandoned me. So it was really on this journey to South America that when nobody wanted to go with me. So I said, well, I'm a feminist, I don't need anybody to come with me. I was very ignorant about how the culture in Latin America is.
Yeah.
Like being a
Yeah.
California girl, thinking I can
Right.
do whatever I want,
Yeah.
I had
Wow.
a wild, I had a wild early 20s where, late teens, early 20s, I had hitchhiked all back, I think the United States or to the East Coast twice. I'd hitchhiked multiple times up to the Bay Area. I had crazy experiences doing that, but they were all like not hitchhiking, they were like ride shares. But they're still strangers, and I didn't know who I was
Yeah.
getting into a car with. But I had this wild thing. I wanted to go see the world, and I was going to do it even though I had no money. I was going to find a way to do it without selling my body or doing crime or anything like that. And I was like, I'm a woman here. I can do whatever I want.
I'll figure this out.
And that's what the feminist mindset trains you to do.
Okay.
Not understanding the cultural barriers, the economic barriers, and the things that can trip you into doing this. So I'm just really thankful that I had God with me the whole time. And the Holy Spirit literally closed doors for me that was like, that's danger, don't do that. And he opened doors saying, you can, like, if I'm at a fork of the road, I felt very strongly to go left or right, really based on my instincts and my intuition, which I believe is a communication way. It's a way to communicate with the Holy Spirit. And if you listen to it, doors open. If you ignore it, bad things happen. And that is
Just
exactly
talking
what
about
happened
that
to me.
before we started the show.
Right? So this
Yep.
is my journey. So I literally traveled for 3 months on like $12,000 going all around, several countries. I didn't get to Ecuador. I ran out of money in Peru. And I
Okay.
never made it to the Galapagos Islands or Easter Island just because I ran out of money. But I really stretched. I like literally have an accounting of every cent I spent to get from A to B.
This has been another episode of the Healthy Living Podcast. We produce this show so that people can share their stories, people that have overcome obstacles, people that are undergoing obstacles. We're building a community of health-minded individuals. If you're interested in supporting the show, please leave a review on the platform you're listening to it on. If you're interested in becoming a guest, please send an email to itsjoegrumbine@gmail.com, or you can send a note into the notes section of the podcast. All right. Well, thank you for supporting this show, and we hope you've enjoyed it.